This is the Innovative Lifestyle, where we talk about all things innovation, whether it's in our day-to-day life or whether it's in my personal passions, and that's manufacturing and new product development. Today we're going to talk about continual improvement and how it fits into the product development process. What's up, everybody? Mike Hill here. I'm excited to have you guys back, and this is a one that I find, a topic that I find super interesting, that I'm super excited about and excited to share about, and one that I've probably spent more time researching over my career than anything else, besides just the product development process, besides just living inside of manufacturing. This is one that I find absolutely fascinating, and that is the world of lean, continual improvement, wastes, and all things of that have to deal with how do we get better as a manufacturer or as a product development engineer in general. And you want to be super crazy, you can extrapolate all these lessons out to life. My wife gives me a hard time because I use a 2-bin Kanban system on many of our groceries and personal hygiene goods in our house, and she thinks that's funny, but I think it's just practical. So going forward, so let's talk about this. Terms like lean, Six Sigma, continuous improvement have become normal everyday jargon in the world, especially in the world of manufacturing. They're becoming popular in healthcare. I've got several good friends that they work continual improvement inside of healthcare and talk about process mapping and all this stuff. But yet, for some reason, in the world of product development, this still kind of becomes a bad stigma. I'm not sure if this is because of just the lack of understanding, or perhaps a lack of focus on new product development. More people are, or less, fewer and fewer companies are focusing on product development internally and more focusing on acquiring new products. Fewer number of products being developed inside of organizations than just being acquired. Crowd thinking is great, collaboration is great, but I still think that companies need to have this capability, or perhaps they're just companies aren't just focused on it anymore, and they're not able to. And so for me, are these reasons really good enough to not do this work inside of an organization? So how do you improve the process that simply produces data and documentation, as opposed to a process that makes a physical good, like in manufacturing, or you can physically track things like you can in healthcare? The long and short of it is it's a simple approach, right? You do it the same way, right? And the reason why I love lean manufacturing is you start by just identifying wastes, and you fix the wastes, you fix the things that bug you, right? And new product development is the same way, is the exact same way, right? So in the world of lean manufacturing, you've got the 8 wastes: defects, overproduction, waiting, non-utilized talent, transportation, inventory, motion, and extra processing. And so what I'm saying is that every one of these wastes are just as relevant in the new product development process as they are in manufacturing, right? So in the world, so I'm going to do a few examples of them and talk a little bit about each one. So in the world of defects, right? Look, has an engineer or someone in the product development process ever put out a document or a piece of data that wasn't 100% right? Well, guess what? That's a defect. You want to know a good way of tracking your defects? Track the number of engineering change notices you have on a new product, right? Number of revisions you have on a newly released document. That's gonna help you track your defects, help you affect that, because guess what? That's what you're producing. You're producing documentation and product development, or perhaps even the prototype side, right? If you're having to reprototype because the product isn't coming out as intended, then you're having defects in your design process, and you get that rectified. Overproduction. producing too many documentation, right? Items that aren't needed, that aren't necessary, requirements that aren't needed, that aren't necessary. One of the big things that Clayton Christensen in his book, The Innovator's Dilemma, talks about is over feature in existing customer bases, existing markets, right? Where the incumbent is actually over featuring product to the point that it's not being acquired, and that's where the low end disruptors have an advantage, right? So overproduction, putting too much into your new product development process or your new product would be a waste, right? And you want to eliminate those wastes. So how do you put in ways? And that's that you can put in different ways of measuring. Whether your features are actually going to be adopted, and there's, we've got a great framework with that, identifying a winning product framework that you can check out at Hills Innovative Solutions, or just, really just like you would in your manufacturing process map your new product development process and figure out where what areas are being overproduced, right? If you're producing documentation that, like, the only burden on that documentation is on the creator of that documentation, perhaps that document isn't needed if the data isn't being utilized further on down the line, right? So waiting. Every new product development process is absolutely ripened with this, right? You're waiting on the customer feedback, you're waiting on prototypes, you're waiting on various other things. So finding ways to run parallel tasks, not parallel tasks that that strain your resources, right? Multitasking is a big bugaboo, and in the world of lean product development, you don't necessarily want to run parallel tasks as long as people are required to work on those tasks, but paralleling to the point that you can multiple tasks are taking place without the strain on resources. I hope that makes sense to people. Non-utilized talents, this is one that just absolutely drives me nuts, right? And I think that this is one that, for organizations that aren't doing new product development, this is the biggest waste of all, right? Because you've got talented resources there that have creative mindsets, and not utilizing them to be creative, come up with problem solving ideas and opportunities and potentially revenue streams for you is a waste. So identifying where you're not utilizing talent to their fullest capability is an item. Or you've got people on the plant floor that they have ideas, that have opportunities, and they're not being heard in the product development team. And so that's a great resource. People on the plant floor are a tremendous resource for new product ideas and improvements. Transportation, this is kind of a harder one to fit into the product development, but and this one and motion, the waste of motion, I think are very important to know. Transportation, particularly if your engineering capabilities aren't co-located with your actual physical prototyping and product manufacturing capabilities, transportation could be a big waste that you can simply overcome, especially with the availability of some really inexpensive, I don't want to say cheap, but inexpensive prototyping tools, rapid manufacturing, additive manufacturing tools, desktop scanners, and milling machines. And like I said, the additive manufacturing has come such a long ways. It's really easy to find opportunities to prototype and co-locate that prototyping to eliminate that waste of transportation, right? Inventory, if you've got a huge backlog of new product pipeline, you're either not utilizing your talent properly, or you're in excess of your capacity. You're not prioritizing properly. Those are all ways that to help manage that inventory, increase that throughput. The other area where you might see inventory is you've got a lot of projects started, but they haven't made it much further than that, right? So like they're stuck in engineering, or they're stuck in purchasing, or they're stuck waiting for capacity on the plant floor. Ways to get through that inventory is just like in manufacturing. You eliminate those bottlenecks, right? And you outsource capacity and capabilities, or you onboard more capacity. Or you go back to that process map and you find, okay, how can we prioritize these projects just like the day-to-day stuff is prioritized, and or how can we streamline our process even more so that we can eliminate this inventory, because inventory of unfinished product development efforts is just the same as inventory of manufactured goods. So. Motion we talked about. I've seen this a few different times now, where literally companies require physical signatures, right, in the digital age, that it's just not required. And I just use that as a blanket example. There's other items where there's still a lot of excess motion in the product development process that requires people to bring stuff back and forth, and that's waste, right? And you look at it at a higher level. There's others of that extra processing. This is another area or another waste that exists. We're going to talk a little bit about, look, if you're creating documentation, or you're creating a tool, or creating something that no one else is going to touch, then perhaps you're touching it too much, or like I said, you leave it in the hands of an engineer, especially an engineer who tends to be more of a perfectionist, right? They're not going to be done. They're just not going to be done, because their minds don't work that way, and so you almost have to put in these guardrails for people to take them and pull them away. I've got an example of going through even more detail, these here and some of the other ones, on a one pager that you can go to get the information. You can find that at hillsinnovativesolutions.com. Get a little more details with that, and as well as but. So in addition to these 8 wastes, there's a book published a few years ago called Mastering Lean Product Development by Ronald Masticelli, which I think he does a really great job for some people taking those really high level, the 8 wastes of lean, and really doing what I just did, and finding specific examples inside of the product development process. Might be a little bit harder to do. So I think he's done a absolutely tremendous job, fascinating job of putting these down into 10 top wastes in the product development process. Number 1 being a chaotic work environment. If you're in manufacturing, or really most businesses these days, you're in a chaotic work environment. Lack of available resources, lack of clear prioritized projects, poor communication, poorly defined requirements, disruptive changes to requirements, lack of early consideration for manufacturing, over-design, analysis paralysis, gold plating, too many meetings, and email overload. These are all examples of waste in product development. And if you're in product development, I guarantee you've lived every one of these 10 wastes. So really, it is your job to identify these wastes and find corrections to these wastes to improve your product development process. So can you relate to these, right? Are these the same as the manufacturing wastes? I think they are. If not, they're similar enough for me. So but again, take a look at these, identify these wastes inside of your process, and move forward. So so that's lean, right? That's lean. That's been lean popularized by Toyota in the 80s. Been around way longer than that, since even before Ford. But it is a great principle, and like I said, it's really straightforward, right? Because the principle of lean is you get lean through the elimination of waste. How do you eliminate the waste? You identify the wastes, and those are ways to identify the waste in your product development process. So if you want to improve your product development process, first identify your wastes, right? Another area is that hasn't been as popular, but it's still popular. Quite a bit of people talk about it in the world of manufacturing, and that's Six Sigma, right? And for me, Six Sigma is really easily defined, through the 6 steps outlined in the DMAIC, define, measure, analyze, improve, and control process. This is really just a problem-solving process, right? And if you're in product development, you are in the business of solving problems, right? The whole purpose of your starting off with your problem, or of product development, is to be solving a problem. If you want more information on this, I highly recommend you check out our framework, Identifying a Winning Product, because this is where we start. We start right here. We even do a master class on that where we spend several hours just talking about the problem, identifying the problem issue. In the master class. So, again, if you're looking to do product development, you're looking to solve a problem. So why not use a Six Sigma type approach to this, right? Where you define, right? Put your product specifications together. You measure, right? What's your customer feedback? What is some methodology for ranking your projects? You analyze, right? Focus groups. You improve. Okay, what is the reaction to your minimum viable product, and then you fix it, and then you control, and you document, and you map that. That product going forward, right? And so that you've got good quality systems, and the continual production of that, right? So again, Six Sigma, very relatable. So Lean relatable, Six Sigma relatable. What about the overarching broader explanation of continual improvement? I think that this is an exciting time for product development, and the product development processes that are out there because of the popularity of Agile. If you're not familiar with Agile, Agile started off in the software world, and the reason it started off in the software world, so the premise is, working in short sprints, getting to a minimum viable product, or what they call an iterative design, and by doing that, because you get in front of the customer quicker, and you get feedback faster, and you improve it, right? So now that costs and really the burden to have iterative design approaches. If you don't have an iterative design approach in your product development process, you really need to be thinking about that, right? I always say there's at least an alpha beta prototype that you're getting customer feedback on before you go into final production, and if you can do more, absolutely do more. If your industry allows for you to get more iterations and more customer feedback before you release a product, absolutely do that, and I encourage that. So in the world of continual improvement, right, and the overarching theme of continual improvement, the product development process is moving right along with that. And as more and more companies adopt agile and iterative design approaches, that's what continual improvement is, right? You get customer feedback, because everything is from the perspective of the customer. You get the customer feedback, you improve, you move forward, right? So here we are. What we just talked about, you've got Lean. Lean is just as applicable to product development as it is to manufacturing. You've got Six Sigma. Six Sigma is just as applicable to product development as it is to manufacturing, and you've got continual improvement as a whole. Agile and is just, continual improvement is just as applicable to product development as it is to manufacturing. So, guys, I hope that you enjoyed this overview. Hope you enjoyed today's episode, and I hope you got something from it. Follow us, subscribe to our YouTube channel, subscribe and get our blog. Follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn. We're on several of the social media channels now, and really appreciate your feedback and really appreciate you listening. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. Thank you, innovators. Change the world. Go invent something.